I come from the region of France where we grow all the croissants and all the baguettes. Like, this is exactly where I come from. And yeah, I thought before to talk about the failure tonight, I will give you a bit of context. So actually, my first failure was where I grew up. Like, it's a very tiny village, and my first opportunity was to become a farmer. So I had this job when I was 14, but then then the farmer was telling me, you're going to get a farm next to my farm, and we're going to grow the business, it's going to be so successful. But then when I broke up with his daughter, I lost my job. So yeah, I started failing very early. All right, but before, to give you a bit of context about what I'm going to talk about tonight, so how I failed my first startup, I have to kind of paint the picture. So when I left my countryside and went to study in this business school in the west of France, I actually did those internships in one company, and it was a French company selling shop equipment for retail, super boring, blah, blah, blah. But then eventually what they asked me to do as an intern, so it was like a 6-month internship at the end, was like, you need to find new customer in the north of Europe. And for a French company, north of Europe is everything above Belgium. That's when people stop speaking French. Right? So eventually, that's what I did, and somehow I was super successful. I was an intern, and I got meeting like in the UK with Tesco, Sainsbury, you name it. In the Nordic, we got meeting with all the big guys like ICA, Rema 1000, then supermarket. And they just didn't understand how I did it. I actually didn't know myself how I did it. But then eventually, somehow we were kicking the Swedish competitors and just getting big contracts in the north of Europe, right, where they don't speak French. And so, that was the beginning of the story in Copenhagen. I was like feeling super confident, and then eventually, after my internship, they sent me to Denmark to set up the Nordic office. And you have to picture me. I'm like 22 or maybe, yeah, 22 or 23 years old. So this cliché of the French arrogant guy, this was me, right? You could not meet another most French arrogant guy than me. So I was like 22, I have my office, I have my car, I have 2 assistants, and every week I'm on the plane at least 3 or 4 times, talking to big companies, making big contracts. I thought I was the smartest guy, like every time in the room. And so with this super big confidence, I thought, okay, like I'm super smart, I know how to do business. I was thinking how to do my ideas, networking with some friends in Copenhagen and just thinking about ideas. And then there was this guy, we always agree with each other and think like that we are both very, very smart. So eventually, this French company, after 1 year, like all the distributor network is set up, like we have a lot of contract, and my boss is leaving, and I'm like 23 or 24, and they're like, come back to France, you can manage now the export department. And I was like, no. I just fucking quit. Like, I'm so smart, I don't want to work for anybody anymore. I went back to France and took a loan. I was like, I'm gonna start my own company. And of course I did that with my friend that always agreed with me because that's just, that's just nice. And actually, when I Google like French and arrogant, I got this picture. So it just fits very well. So anyway, so I do this. So I take a loan. And with my friend, we always agree with each other, and we start a business. And the business was very simple. So I live in Copenhagen, and as you know, like everyone has a bicycle in Copenhagen. There is more bicycle than inhabitants, actually. And I was like, I wanted to buy this bike. It's called a fixie. So it's a bicycle with like just no gear. So very simple bike. And it costs like at least 500 euro or even more. And I was like, this is so ridiculous. Like, why this simple bicycle is so expensive? And then I started Googling where is the cheapest labor in Europe. It was Bulgaria, and then I checked if they have bicycle manufacturers, and they had, and then I asked, do you have this model? Yes, and how much it cost? And they told me like 70 euro. I was like, okay, 70 euro, 500 euro in Copenhagen. And then I asked, okay, so can you send me one? They're like, no, we only sell full truck of product. And I was like, okay, it was at that time where we actually, it was at the moment when this group buying website were booming. I don't know if you remember, it was Groupon and so on and so forth, where people were buying stuff in groups. So I was like, whoa, they can put 200 bicycles in one truck. So if I get 200 people to buy a bicycle for like, I put some money, like for 150 euro, then that's it, I make money, group buying, perfect idea, right? And my friend agreed with me, anyway. So we did that, and then the first idea we had to go and pitch investors, and they were telling us, you guys are great business guys, but you need some technical people in the team, and like they don't get it. We have a team in Thailand, they are super cheap. And so, didn't take their advice, had our team in Thailand, and we thought the best idea on how to spend the money that I borrowed and he borrowed was to go on a massive business trip in all Eastern Europe to meet all the suppliers of furniture, bicycle, anything big that you can put in one truck. And the feedback was great. They all want to sell us a truck. So like, that's amazing. The business will boom. And the guys in Thailand were slow to ship the website, but that doesn't matter. And so eventually we did that, and 11 months forward, I ran out of money. Right? So that was not so fun anymore, and started to have some fight with the friends, that we started to not agree anymore about some simple stuff, like maybe we should launch, maybe we should fire the team in Thailand that doesn't deliver. By the way, they disappeared. So, and then it started really being not so fun, right? So I was like, after my bachelor degree, like super successful, then we have this startup, we are in this hype, and I think it's something super dangerous that you can feel as well when you're in startups, is when you don't go to market too fast, you tend to agree with one another about your assumptions, and that, everything makes sense, and you're just stepping back before to go to market. So we had all our super spreadsheets with all our super nice calculation that meant nothing, and basically I was broke. I could not buy food in the supermarket. We had to clean office at night to basically pay the bills. Couldn't afford tickets to go back home for Christmas. This was terrible, like you feel very, very bad, right? But then eventually, we decided to basically split and go our own way. And luckily, my wife and my family was next to me and were telling me that I'm going to do it again, and I was really supportive. And at that time, I made it again, so I was lucky to, at this exact moment, there was this startup called Trustpilot that just raised some money from two very, very smart business angels, so private investor, that actually sold their previous company to a company called Omniture that was later bought by Adobe. And so when they invested in this company, they also came as manager. And I joined them when they were moving from the north of Denmark to Copenhagen. And they were just hiring people that could speak any language to basically sell their product, right? And so when I joined this team, the deal was very simple. They were like, look, I was the employee number 20 and the fourth sales guy that they hired. And the deal was very simple. They told me, like, look, we cannot basically pay you much, but you have uncapped commission. So as much as you sell, as much as you get, right? And the long story short is that within a bit more than 2 years, we grew the company from, 20 to almost 400 people. We had offices in New York, London, they had Berlin, and when I left, they were opening Melbourne in Australia. We raised over $100 million, and we had 150 sales people in the sales floor, right? So I always said this was like the Wolf of Wall Street, except that we were not selling, we were selling a real product. We had no cocaine and no prostitute on the sales floor as well. But that was nice. So with this story, basically what happened is, yes, I failed, but then this was an amazing journey, because the product I was selling was actually to help e-commerce to get customer reviews and increase their sales on their website with legit reviews and so on. And it was amazing because I was speaking to entrepreneurs that succeed to do what I failed, right? And then also what happened is, along the way, is after 2 years, so I had debts, so I borrowed money, and I also lost all my savings, but I had debts for 7 years, right? So when you have debt for 7 years and you buy a flat or something that you can see and touch every day, that's kind of cool. But when you have debt for 7 years and you basically lost, everything, it feels a bit different. So I was really also I became obviously one of the top performers at Trustpilot. And that's kind of what drove me, to pay all my debts as well. And in 2 years, I paid all my debts instead of 7 years. And what happened is, I remember when I became debt-free, I just felt like, whoa, this is it. I want what to do next, right? And actually, at that time, I remember when I kind of felt like, this is it, I made it again. I kind of came up. I promised myself 3 things. Fail, no, try and fail, but don't fail to try. That was like the first motto. Like, this is fine. Like, you can fail, but you should not fail to try, basically. So it's completely okay. The second thing is, I promised myself to not say, I told you, to anyone, because when you fail, you get so many people coming like, told you. This is so useless. And I really, really promised myself, and when I catch myself, that I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna, no, I don't want to say it. Because it's so useless. And then, of course, the third thing I promised myself is to marry that girl, which I did. Actually, the funny story is when I asked if she wants to marry me, she said, are you sure? So I actually said yes to my own proposal.
Thank you very much. Thank you for such a... Nope.
I still have 44 seconds.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Too quickly on a stage.
But hey, that could be a very nice finish. And no worries. So then the long story short is, it's still okay because in all these stories I found my passion. I eventually ended up here in Lithuania 4 years ago when Praktika Capital just started to invest in startups. They are like one of the main VC here that invest in early stage startups. And I was helping startups in their portfolio to basically go to the market as fast and as cheap as possible. And for the past 4 years, I had the chance to work with over 50 companies. And of course, many failed, but that was good. And eventually, I'm glad to announce as well today that from Q1, I will start to invest money as well with my own fund.